My wife cheated with her ex while I was working double shifts to afford our house, so I kicked her out and transferred the deed to only my name. I'm a 32-year-old guy. And for the past 2 years, I've been working double shifts just to build the life my wife always dreamed of. Laura and I got married 3 years ago. We were high on love and low on cash, but it didn't matter, we had big dreams. We bought this run-down little house on the edge of town. The roof leaked, the wiring was ancient, and the paint peeled like old skin. But she called it our canvas. I believed her to afford the mortgage and renovations. I started pulling double shifts 9 to 5 at a logistics firm. Then 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. at a warehouse on the other side of town. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid. I'd get home around 2:45, shower, eat something cold if I had the energy, and collapse for maybe 3 hours before starting all over again. I barely had time to breathe, let alone think. But I kept going because I thought I was building something for us. For her, Laura used to pack my lunches with little notes. "You've got this. Love you." But those stopped after the first few months. She said she was just tired, and I believed her. Who wouldn't be tired in a half-finished house filled with paint fumes and debt? Eventually, I stopped coming home to warm dinners. Sometimes she wouldn't even be home at all when I got off my night shift. She said she was staying late at her sister's or going out with coworkers. I never questioned it. I was too worn down to push back, and every time I felt something was off when she pulled away from kisses. When she flinched at touch, I told myself it was just stress, that things would get better once the house was done. Once we had more time, but I was wrong. So wrong. It started with small comments. Laura would sigh and mutter things like, "It's like I don't even have a husband." I'd look up from my coffee, hands shaking from lack of sleep, and try to smile through it. "I'm doing this for us," I'd say. She'd shrug and walk away. Then came the excuses. "I need yoga to manage my anxiety," or "the girls planned a surprise dinner. I can't miss it." I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. But her phone started living face down on the table. She took it with her even into the bathroom. Once, I picked it up by habit when it buzzed, and she snatched it so fast you'd think I grabbed a weapon. Still, I blamed myself. Maybe I wasn't giving her enough. I was always gone, always tired. Maybe love wasn't enough without presence. I even apologized once for not being around more. She didn't say anything, just went back to scrolling. Intimacy died quietly in the corners of our bed. I'd reach for her and feel her flinch, or worse, go rigid, like she was doing me a favor. "I'm just not in the mood," she'd say. "I'm tired." Then came the comparisons, tucked into awkward laughs. "Remember how Jake used to make breakfast in bed?" Or, "My ex would have never forgotten date night. She always laughed after, like it was a joke." But it didn't feel like one. Then one night, I got home earlier than usual. Her voice drifted from the kitchen, light and playful, full of a warmth I hadn't heard in months. I stopped just outside the door. "I missed that too," she giggled into the phone. Then silence. She had seen me. Heard the door, and just like that, the laughter died. My body wasn't built for the life I was living. 2 jobs. 3 hours of sleep if I was lucky, and meals that mostly came from vending machines or half-warmed leftovers. My eyes stayed bloodshot. My hands shook so much that coworkers asked if I drank on the job. I didn't. I couldn't even afford a beer. Every day felt like sleepwalking through wet concrete. My only goal was to keep our heads above water, to finish this house, to make her happy, to survive. But survival came with its own slow death. I'd come home at odd hours, early mornings. Sometimes midnights, if a shift got canceled. None of little things started catching my eye. A wine glass in the sink when we hadn't touched alcohol in weeks. Lipstick stains on it. Sheets freshly changed on a random Tuesday, even though she never made the bed. Once, I found a shirt that definitely wasn't mine stuffed in the laundry basket. She said it was her cousin's. I wanted to believe her. Then came the moment that sent a cold knot straight to my gut. I was walking to my car after grabbing the mail when our neighbor, Mr. Franklin, waved me down. "Hey, I didn't know Laura had a brother visiting. Saw him leaving around 6 this morning. Tall guy, bit of a beard." I froze. Laura doesn't have a brother. Never did. I smiled, nodded, said something like, "Oh yeah. He's just in town for a bit," and walked away before my legs could give out. That night, I lay in our bed, our half-renovated, barely lit, love-worn bedroom and stared at the ceiling. My chest was tight. Like my ribs didn't want to hold my heart anymore. I told myself I was being paranoid, that maybe it was her cousin, that the wine glass didn't mean anything, that I was just tired. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right, and it was only going to get worse. It was a Tuesday night when everything cracked wide open. The warehouse had a power outage halfway through my shift. They sent us home early, apologizing with pizza coupons like that would fix anything. I should have been relieved I could finally get more than 3 hours of sleep. But as I turned the corner to our street, headlights off, windows down, I saw a car parked halfway up our driveway. At first, I didn't think much of it, until I got close enough to recognize the dented bumper, the custom rims, the vanity plate that read, J-Ride, . Jake, I hadn't seen that name, hadn't thought that name in years. Jake wasn't just anyone. He was Laura's ex from college, the one who cheated on her with her roommate, the one she cried over for months while I sat beside her on that ratty dorm couch, handing her tissues, telling her she deserved better. I was her better. At least, that's what I thought. The porch light was off, but I could see a faint flicker from inside. Our living room. I could picture it without even going in. Laura, curled on the couch, laughing at something stupid, Jake said, glass of wine in hand. Her phone turned off like it always was when I tried to text. I didn't go in. I didn't. Ugh. I just sat there in my car across the street, hands glued to the steering wheel, heart pounding like it wanted out of my chest. My knuckles went white, my teeth clenched so hard I thought they might crack. I should have stormed in, should have screamed, should have done something, but I didn't. I waited until Jake left 2 hours later. Then I went inside and pretended I didn't know, at least, not yet. The next morning, I barely looked at her. She was humming in the kitchen, flipping pancakes like it was any other day. Like her ex hadn't just snuck out of our house while I sat in my car, choking on betrayal. I kissed her forehead before leaving for work, smiled like nothing was wrong. But inside, something had shattered. That day, I stopped at a hardware store and bought a discreet, motion-activated camera. It looked like a charger. I plugged it into the hallway outlet right near the front door, angled just enough to catch anyone coming or going. It didn't take long. 4 days later, I watched the footage on my lunch break in the back corner of the warehouse. There he was, Jake entering at 11:43 p.m. and leaving just before sunrise. Like clockwork, like a routine, like he lived there. I felt sick. I dug deeper. I remembered we had a shared iCloud from when we set up her old phone. Logged in. The messages were still there. Hundreds. Some deleted. Some not. I miss your hands. He's too tired to notice anything. Let's just run away like we joked about in college. My hands shook. I dropped my phone. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. The rage wasn't loud, was cold, silent, precise. That night, I stopped sleeping in our bed. I told her I pulled a muscle at work and didn't want to toss and turn. She barely looked up from her phone. The next day, I called a lawyer during my lunch break, explained the situation, asked how to remove her from the house deed. He said it was possible with documentation and proof. I had both now. All I needed was patience. The next week, I pulled out the house documents from our filing cabinet right beneath our marriage certificate. Ironically enough, her name was right there. In bold, I remembered the day I added it. We were standing in the county office, hand in hand. She squeezed my fingers and whispered, "Thank you for believing in me." I smiled and said, "This house is ours." I meant every word. Now, those same words tasted like ash. I brought everything to the lawyer bank statements. Receipts, wire transfers, even texts where I mentioned covering every bill. He sifted through them silently, then looked up and said, honestly, "You've got a strong case. She's on the deed, but you funded 95% of it. With proof, we can file for equitable distribution and reverse this." It was like someone cracked a window in my sealed chest. I could breathe again, but I didn't show it. At home, I kept the mask on. I brought her coffee in the mornings. I asked how her day was. I pretended I was feeling better, like she called it. "Glad you're over your little mood swings," she smirked one night. I nodded and kissed her on the cheek, but behind that kiss was fire. Every document was getting notarized. Every file duplicated. Every text message backed up 3 times. She thought I was healing. I was preparing for war, and when I struck, she wouldn't see it coming. It was a Wednesday when my body finally gave out. The warehouse was short-staffed, and I'd picked up 2 extra shifts because we were behind on property taxes. 16 hours on my feet, skipping meals, chugging coffee like water. By the end of it, the room was spinning. My legs buckled in the staff locker room. I collapsed against the wall. Drenched in sweat, breathing like I'd run a marathon with a fridge on my back. Someone handed me a bottled water and asked if they should call an ambulance. I shook my head. "Just need a minute," I lied. When I finally dragged myself to my car and got home around midnight, I expected darkness. Silence, maybe Laura already asleep, but the lights were on. Bedroom door cracked open. I heard laughter. Hers. And his. I froze in the hallway, the plastic water bottle still in my hand. My fingers clenched it until it crinkled. I pushed the door open. There they were, Jake sprawled out on my side of the bed, shirtless, laughing at something on her phone. Laura lying beside him, wrapped in my blanket, her hair tied up like she used to do for me. She didn't even flinch. Didn't scramble, didn't hide. She just looked at me, eyes half-lidded, and said, "What are you doing home so early?" Jake looked up, expression blank. I didn't speak. "You were never here," Laura added, with a shrug. I needed someone who was. That hit harder than the collapse at work, harder than the footage, harder than the texts. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't regret. It was indifference. I walked out without a word, past the wine glasses in the sink, past the crooked family photo in the hallway. I stepped into the driveway, looked up at the house I bled myself dry for. And for the first time, I felt like a stranger inside my own life. The morning after seeing them in my bed, I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just moved at 8:01 a.m. I walked into the county clerk's office, paperwork in hand, and filed the deed revision documents my lawyer had prepped. The clerk scanned everything, stamped a few things, and said, "This'll take a couple of weeks. We'll notify her once it's processed." That was the first domino. By noon, I had frozen our joint accounts. I opened a new one in my name only, rerouted my direct deposit, and removed her access to every card she'd once maxed out under our name. That same evening, I rented her a 1-bedroom Airbnb about 30 minutes away, paid in full for the week, booked a moving service to pack her things while she was out getting drinks with coworkers. I boxed everything: her clothes, her makeup, even the framed photo of our wedding that used to sit on her nightstand. She didn't notice a thing. For days, I kept playing the role: husband, steady and silent. I brought home dinner. I smiled when she showed me some TikTok. I even asked what she wanted to do for her birthday, which was coming up in a few days. She beamed. Finally, in the mood to celebrate me again. She joked. I smiled. Yeah. Something like that. Because I had a plan. She thought she was getting a surprise dinner, maybe a gift card to Sephora. What she didn't know was that the real gift was already wrapped in cardboard boxes and waiting for her. At a new address, her birthday landed on a Friday. I got off work early and came home to prepare everything, just like she always said she wanted. Candles lit, low jazz humming from the speakers, her favorite wine breathing on the counter. I even picked up the same overpriced chocolate cake she loved from that downtown bakery. When she walked in, her face lit up like it was the first time she'd felt seen in months. Wow, you really did all this for me. I nodded. Happy birthday. She changed into a dress, poured herself a glass. And we sat down at the dinner table like we were a normal couple again. Like none of it had happened. We made small talk for a few minutes. She laughed at something I said, touched my arm the way she used to. For a moment, it almost felt real. Then I reached into the drawer next to me and pulled out the folder. Inside was everything. The finalized deed, now solely under my name. The printed screenshots of her messages to Jake. Still images from the footage showing him entering and leaving at ungodly hours. I slid the folder across the table. Right between her wine glass and her fork, she stared at it. Opened it. Her face didn't crumble. It contorted. What is this? She hissed. I looked her dead in the eye. This is your exit, she scoffed. You're crazy. No, I said, standing. I'm done. The house isn't yours anymore. Neither am I. She stood up, knocking her chair back. You're overreacting. We can fix this. We, you, and Jake. She froze. I walked to the door and opened it. Right on cue. A familiar car pulled up, Jake behind the wheel, looking confused. Your ride's here, I said, holding the door open. Laura's voice cracked. You're really doing this? I didn't answer. She stepped out into the night, into the silence between us, and I shut the door. Soft, final, unshakable. Word got out fast, faster than I expected. By Monday, I was getting texts from her mom calling me heartless. Her sister sent a voice note saying I'd humiliated Laura on her birthday and that I should be ashamed of myself. They didn't ask for context. They didn't care what she did to them. I was the villain. Some of our mutual friends reached out too. A few were polite, man. I wish you'd just divorced her quietly. Others were less kind. But what surprised me the most were the quiet messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Old coworkers, distant cousins. Even her ex-friend, who she'd once fallen out with, saw what you did. Respect. Took guts. Man, she didn't deserve a husband like you, apparently. I wasn't the only one who'd seen her mask slip. Jake dumped her within a month. I heard through the grapevine that he ghosted her completely, no calls, no closure. Just disappeared. Maybe he got tired of being the side guy. Or maybe she tried to play the victim with him too, and it didn't land. Then, about 6 weeks after, I kicked her out. My phone rang at 2:14 a.m. It was her voice cracked through the speaker, soaked in tears. I messed up. I miss us. Can we please talk? I didn't answer. Just recorded the call and sent it straight to my lawyer, not for revenge, for protection, because I'd finally reclaimed my peace, and no one, especially not her, was going to take that from me again. I wish I could say I hated her, that I felt nothing but rage. But the truth is, I missed her, not her. Exactly, more like the idea of her. The version I built in my head. The partner who believed in me, waited up for me, loved me in the quiet ways. That version never really existed. But grief doesn't care about facts. It latches onto the memory, not the reality. For the first time in over a year, I slept 8 uninterrupted hours. No night shifts. No second job. No lying awake, wondering who she was texting. Just silence. Heavy, healing silence. I took some of the money I'd been saving for renovations and bought myself a real gaming chair, something ridiculous and bright blue with lumbar support and way too many buttons. It sat like a throne in my new office. My space, I started repainting the living room. Got rid of the bland neutrals she loved so much and splashed dark forest green across the walls. It felt warm, lived in, like someone real lived there again. And I went to therapy. For the first few sessions, I couldn't get words out. I just sat there, fidgeting with my keys, heart pounding like I was still hiding something. But eventually, the dam broke. I talked about the exhaustion, the betrayal, the guilt for not seeing it sooner. The therapist said something that stuck with me. You didn't fail her. She failed herself. That sentence wrapped itself around my ribs and held them steady. I'm still healing. I probably will be for a while, but I'm standing, breathing, feeling things again, and while the scar will always be there, it no longer defines me. 6 months later, I was walking downtown, just killing time on a Saturday afternoon, when I passed a cafe I used to avoid. That's when I saw her dot. Laura, she was behind the counter. Apron smudged, hair pulled back in a loose knot. She looked tired. Not in the dramatic movie scene kind of way, just worn out, like life had pressed down on her harder than she expected it to. She glanced up as I passed. Our eyes met for the first time since that night I shut the door behind her. For a moment, I didn't feel anger, or pity, or regret. I just felt done. She gave me a small, hesitant smile, one of those polite, fragile ones that people give when they're not sure if they're allowed to exist in your world anymore. I nodded once, not with bitterness, not with warmth, just closure, and then I kept walking. The wind hit a little colder. My jacket tugged slightly in the breeze. The sidewalk under my feet felt steady, solid, like it belonged to me again. I didn't look back, not because I was trying to make a statement, but because there was nothing back there I needed. I worked myself to the bone to build us a future. Skipped sleep, skipped meals, skipped life just to give her something stable. Something real. She chose chaos. She chose a memory. She chose the past, and I finally chose me. Thank God I did. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. It doesn't have to be cruel or explosive. Sometimes revenge is just reclaiming your name on the deed and never looking back.